to answer, let's look at the types of economic systems. There are n number of economic systems which have been in place either in history or are in place right now. But if we have to classify the main economic systems, we can break them down into three main economic systems, which are capitalism, socialism, and mixed economy. Some other types of economic systems also emerged over the period of time, but they somehow came close to one of these three. So let's first look at what these three economic systems are. First one is capitalism. Capitalism is an economic system based on the principle of free enterprise, which denotes minimum government intervention, which emphasizes that any individual or any private organization, if it deserves to hold any resource, it must hold it. The government must not intervene in every business activity, and the private enterprises should be encouraged to come forward and to take part, take active part, and a very important part in production of goods and services. Individual ownership of resource is undoubtedly an important feature in this kind of system, and with control and command over resources, individual can conduct any type of business. The objective in such a system is to maximize private gains. And more or less, in the in most of the parts of the world, capitalism is in place today. Absolute capitalism can be disastrous, which we'll talk about later on when we'll be talking about merits and demerits. But the basic idea is, the basic intent behind capitalism is that if production of goods and services, if the industries are given to private entities, they will exclusively focus on efficiency and effectiveness, and they can bring out good results. If government takes the load to produce everything in a country, or if it tries to shoulder all the responsibility of the entire community, things might go in a wrong manner. And it is not just the intention. This is something what the civilization has learned after experiencing experiencing for a good amount of time. So here basically the idea is, let private entities handle, control resources, let them operate, let them produce goods and services, and eventually it will be beneficial for the government, for the country, for the economy. Any type of enterprise or production of any commodity or service is permitted, so long it is wanted by the society. And when we say any type of enterprise or production, it also comes with certain exceptions. Like today, in case of defense equipments, although recently Indian government has given relaxations in FDI, but still areas like defense, uh, railways is also being privatized slowly. And recently government came up with proposals wherein they are planning to allow private entities uh, to run their own trains, like they did for Tejas Express on 3 tracks, and they allowed IRCTC to run these trains. So ultimately, what is happening is that recently the government has started to allow private entities to come into certain domains. But earlier, these particular industries were reserved for the government only. And today, even today, there are certain areas like nuclear power, like defense. This is all handled by the government itself. But apart from that, almost everything is open to the private entities. The degree of openness may vary from product to product, and It might also vary for domestic players and for foreign players as well, because that is again part of the economic policy. But private entities are allowed there. Price mechanism is the nucleus of the capitalist society. The price mechanism clearly reflects the wants of the people. So, once this is known, the producer would allocate the resources to manufacture and sell the products in great demand. And while doing so, there is no control or regulation over production. So, we are bidding goodbye to the red tapeism, to the restrictions that were earlier imposed on production and are still being imposed in certain kind of economic systems like socialism and all, which we'll be talking about in the uh, following slides. So the basic idea is there is no check, and saying that no check might be a bad term or a wrong term to use. There is basically not no limitation in here. That doesn't mean the private entities can produce anything or everything. There is again there's checks and systems in place to see that private entities don't take undue advantage of it. But in most of the cases, they are not restricted for everything. In other words, we can say oligopoly environment prevails, but each producer differentiates his product so that he is able to stay in the market, and he is able to attract more and more customers. Technology and innovation ensure the stability and growth of the organization, and this comes as a big merit of capitalization as capitalism. Sorry, as private entities tend to compete head to head in order to capture larger share of the market, and their entire strategy is driven by innovation, betterment of the product, using technology or better and better technology all the time. So it eventually develops the entire market. The system is so flexible that it can adjust itself for any economic conditions. The workers get equal opportunities, and those with skills would be able to command better wages and salaries. In a just capitalism offers scope for growth of efficient individuals and organization. In a just, we can say it talks about survival of the fittest. Looking at certain, okay, before we go to the merits, let's uh, let's take example of certain economies which are quite capitalist in nature. I'm using the term quite capitalist because degree of socialism or degree of involvement of government is there also, but up to a very lower extent. So capitalism is quite evident today in today's world in USA. US is a, I'll say now, it's a perfectly economist. It is a perfectly capitalism oriented economy. Britishers came to India and ruled us for around 200 years. European countries have been capitalist economies from so long, right? So now let's have a look at the merits of capitalism. First, economic freedom. Since private entities and individuals are free to operate and to set up their own systems to produce goods and services, so undoubtedly economic freedom is there. Automatic working, either we talk about the price mechanism or the dependency upon the market forces. Somehow, automatic systems are believed to work. In other terms, we call it hand of God. Variety of goods and services, as we recently talked about oligopoly, how oligopoly is evident in capitalism, and different producers are producing similar kind of goods. So that ultimately the customers get variety of products. So in a particular product categories, let's say air conditioner, Now, there are n number of companies, those who are producing air conditioner, but there some kind of differentiation has to be there. Otherwise, you won't be able to survive as a company. And in this pursuit, the companies tend to differentiate their product, and in this particular process, they basically enhance the quality or the efficiency of the product itself. Optimum use of resources. Optimum uses use we quote it as a merit of capitalism, because private entities are into head-to-head competition, and since they are fighting for survival and growth, so they tend to focus more on the optimum utilization of whatever resources they've got. Either the firm is a small or it's a large company, it's a multinational, they always focus on efficiency and effectiveness. Efficient producer, as I just said, because they are always driven by innovation, maximization of things, and cutting down the wastage. This is what they believe in, and what we call, for example, there are certain concepts in management like lean manufacturing, just in time, Six Sigma. All these concepts basically focus on improving effectiveness and efficiency, because every organization knows unless they are able to reduce the wastage, unless they are able to reduce the errors, they won't be able to survive for so long in this in current highly competitive market. Higher standards of living. Since the most of the things are in private hands, competition is tough. They are driven by innovation. Better and better products will ultimately come into the market, which will enhance the overall standard of living. And since private entities are taking command here, it means they'll be in a good position to pay more for factors of production, which ultimately leads to increased wages and salaries of individuals. If they earn more, undoubtedly they'll be having more disposable income, which will ultimately increase their spending power. So they are earning more and they have good products out there, which will ultimately lead to better or higher standards of living. Then incentive to efficient. The entire system runs on efficiency. If you are good, you get incentive for that. And new inventions. Since the market is highly competitive, cutthroat competition is out there, undoubtedly every organization aspires to become more and more efficient. It always try to bring something new and better into the market. So there is huge scope of invention, and it has happened all the time. But everything has its own pros and cons. So does capitalism. Demerits are first economic inequality. Since survival of the fittest is there, those who deserve gets what they deserve. It can basically result into people at the bottom of pyramid suffering, and they basically lead a very uh, low profile, which can ultimately enlarge the gap between the rich and the poor. Uh, there's a high scope of emergence of monopolies. Few industries can be driven by certain companies only. A large organization can take over the entire industry because there is no cap, there is no check for them. So it can prove fatal. Third, resources are held by individuals and organization, and underutilization might be there. Here's a point. In the merits, we said proper utilization is ensured. In demerits, we are saying it might not get properly utilized. The basic idea behind this is that although the basic framework of capitalism says that if resources are handed over to private organization, they tend to utilize it more. But it doesn't happen all the times. Reason being, when the company is producing something and the goods are out there in the market and demand is there, people tend to buy it. But if the supply gets higher, then prices may fall. In order to check that, in order to control that, what private organizations do, they will increase production up to a certain level only, so that supply is not overpassing the demand, so that they can charge higher prices from the customers. If the supply sides get bigger, they tend to stop the production, or they tend to decrease the production, so that that scarcity remains in the market and markets are not over flooded by the company. So that's why their basic aim is not the welfare of the society. They are out there in the market to earn money, and to earn money they may take certain actions, they may take certain routes which might disrupt the utilization of the resources. Producers always restrict output, like just what I quoted. They will restrict output in order to charge higher prices. And in a capitalist society, they divide between the haves and have-nots, widen that over the period. So these are certain demerits of capitalism.